Good silhouette is absolutely essential when it comes to really any kind of shape creation. It's really the first thing you're going to be reading, and it makes a tremendous difference. So, in this chapter, we will focus on silhouette. We'll talk about how you can actually view the silhouette properly in ZBrush and how you can evaluate it. And then we'll take a model, which is not super good, and we'll make it a lot better when it comes to the silhouette. One of the key reasons why silhouette is so important is because it allows you to recognize the characters right away. Can anyone guess who these three characters are? Immediately, if you're familiar with The Incredibles, you can see this is Cinder, Mr. Incredible, and Edna Mode. There's just no doubt you're not going to confuse Mr. Incredible with Elastigirl or anything like that. So, immediately, you read who the character is. Even this character, where the silhouette in this case isn't actually like great in terms of the pose. It doesn't have arms because the arms are forward. This was just a crappy angle I found. But even here, there is just no doubt at all who the characters are. You also read who they are as well just from the silhouette. You can tell that Edna is more of an arrogant character. It's almost like you can tell that she's a fashion designer just by the pose. You can almost imagine Brad Bird's voice on her just to just who she is as a character without even having seen the movie. Then you have Mr. Incredible. You can kind of see his slightly down-to-earth posture, but he's also really strong, but also maybe he's gained a few pounds here and there. And then you have this guy, which, again, bad angle, but you can clearly tell that he's maybe more of a bit of an agile character, and he's maybe a bit flexible with what he's doing or going around, and also he has spiky hair. He just doesn't read as a particularly good character. This reads more as a bit of a villain to me. Then we also have this character, which I believe is also a Disney character, but an early maquette I found, which I just made a silhouette from. So the point here isn't necessarily so much that you get who the character is, but it's more, do you get the appeal of the character? Even here you can see that there's a lot of gesture going on, just like going around into the character. So this is based on a clay sculpture, so and it's not the best angle I found, but even so you can still read who the character is. This is a young, beautiful woman who is probably dancing or doing something like that, or there's a magic power shooting out of her. At least it's a nice dynamic character, and you can kind of infuse a personality into her just by this. You can tell she's not in her 60s, and you can tell it's not a man in his 40s, and it's not a child. You can just get a lot of character just from looking at the silhouette. Which brings us to ZBrush. So here we have the trusted example of good and bad. We will check out the silhouette in ZBrush, and there are a few ways of doing this. First one is, if you're using ZBrush 2020, you can easily do that up here. I've also made a little button in my interface, so you can enable the thumbnail, and you can also just change the silhouette on and off. And you can just drag it on and off, or drag the size up and down to make it bigger. So an easy way is simply just to do this. Make sure you are in ortho view, meaning that perspective is off, because otherwise you can see that the silhouette changes, and it's a lot easier to read the silhouette. Because otherwise, if you're doing something like this, it's a bit hard to see, like, oh, it looks like his arm is way thicker than it is, and you can make the thigh look giant just from this. So you want to really be in ortho view when you're evaluating the silhouettes. So now you can clearly see the silhouettes, and you can also see that I've paid some attention to the silhouette when I was doing this as well. We can also check the silhouette directly in the viewport itself. We can do this if we just change the color to black. You can see that now that there is some specularity. So what we can do, we can change this to a material without any spec, at least lower spec. In this case, the red wax is actually good. I mean, this is the worst material on earth, but it actually serves a purpose for this specific example. If you were to choose the flat material, this also works on flat color. But if you have it pure black, it doesn't. So if you just make it slightly above black, then this also works as well. And then you have the true silhouette. You can also change the color to white, which also gives you a silhouette. So let's make this dark again, and let's change this to the red wax material. And then we can evaluate between the good and the bad. And this comes back into what we talked about in the appeal video. So we're not going to cover exactly what's wrong and what's right. But the point is that you can now clearly see the differences in silhouette. And this is a common scenario where the model might look like this if you don't consider the silhouette. Because it's such an easy way of seeing it. It's such an honest way of viewing the model. It's one of these things I'm always evaluating, either consciously by actually checking the silhouette like this, which doesn't allow me to focus on anything else, or just by more internalizing the shapes, just by looking at the model itself without checking the silhouette, like from a technical point of view. So make sure that you're rotating around the model and you're evaluating the model from all angles. It is tricky to make the model work from every single angle, just because there are just angles which just aren't going to be that flattering. And maybe by having some angles, like maybe this angle is going to be super good, then you're compromising a lot of different angles. But in general, try to make it a good 360. For instance, one of the things I'm seeing with this model, even the good one, is that the hands really could be a lot better. It's very messy when you're looking at the hands. I'm sure you're understanding the volume going on. This could have been a lot cleaner. In general, there are some shapes which could have been done with some massaging. You can also click the V key in order to check the silhouette as well. This just toggles between black and white, basically just toggles between these two colors. So this is a pretty quick way of doing it as well. If you're working like this and you just want to check the silhouette real quick, you can just hit the V key. Oh, if this is such this, now you can just go between these two and check the silhouette with the V key. And then we'll go and get into a practical part of this video, which is fixing the silhouette of this troll orc head. This is made by artists who really rushed ahead and really skipped a lot of the fundamentals. And I know that because that was me. This is made a few years ago, and I was already working professionally in the field this time, and I knew all the things. But I just watched the Warcraft trailer many years ago now, and I was just really inspired and just wanted to get something out quickly. And it kind of worked because I did some nice renders of it and some nice backlighting and Photoshop paint over. So it kind of worked as a concept piece from certain angles, maybe like this angle or something. But it doesn't work as a sculptural piece. So let's do a little analysis of why this doesn't work. If we check the silhouette now, let's just change this to a different material. You can see that this is really messy, and not in a good or it's detailed way. It's just in a way that the shapes just aren't very clean. Let's look at this. Like the shapes go like this, and then there's a lump here and a lump and then straight and a curve, and it's just all over the place. And they're not deliberate shapes. They're just kind of put down there because I had no time at all. I mean, the entire thing is made in very, very short amount of time. But even so, like, we have to simplify this down to something where we have much better curves. Maybe the curves will go like this, and one nice flowing curve goes out like so, and it goes down, and then maybe the tooth comes out as a big one, and we're just simplifying it down into good, clean shapes. So let's get started with that. I will go in and I'll make a new layer on this guy. And then we'll change this back to the basic material. And for this video, you can absolutely follow along with this as well. You can find the C tool in this chapter as well. So first what we want to do is I actually want to kill off just the teeth for now. This is a bit easier to see. And then I want to make sure the silhouette is deliberate. Right now, this is messy. So I want to make sure this is one strong cohesive shape. And yes, I'm dealing with the slightly specular material, but that's not a huge problem because it also allows me to actually see some shape as well. But the good thing about doing it like this is that you're forced to not deal with big or small shapes. You're forced to not deal with details because you can't see them. So when I'm doing this, it doesn't really matter that I'm destroying a lot of the details because they're not helping me anyway. One thing to be aware of as well when you're doing the silhouette is you have to check the silhouette properly like this. You can't just check it from the side view and go from there. Because if we were to check it now, maybe you're only pushing out this simple point and the volumes around it doesn't work. So it's not just a game of fixing the silhouette. The silhouette is a byproduct of all the shapes you put into the model. So every single shape has to work together. So in this case, I need to push this back properly in a proper view, and then making this shape nice and clean. So it's one nice clean shape like this. And then we'll work on the silhouette. So this is one nice clean shape as well. But it can be a situation where you're doing a quick pass just to get the overall silhouette in, and then you're fixing the shapes just to make sure they're working as well. So we can do something like this. Maybe his head has been bashed in, or it's just a skull shape, whatever it might be. We can just be deliberate. So then we can have maybe more of a straight here, and then it can be a curve here. So it goes straight to curve, And then we have more of a curve going down. This is not necessarily about super good and amazing character design right away. This is more just about trying to make the shapes a bit more appealing for now. And bottom as well, this is just where I've gone in and I've just made it really just broken up because it looks pretty cool when you're doing a concept piece. But for something like this, we just have to simplify it down a little bit, because otherwise it's really obscuring our view. Can work on the front view as well, and just trying to work some of these shapes up. Push this down a little bit. Okay, so already now it's looking a lot better to me in terms of just a pure silhouette. It's one of these things that sometimes you can't intellectually see what's different. You can just feel it. The model just feels a bit better once you're doing this. And I actually like better what I had before. So let's bring some of this back. And then I'll have to go over and I have to simplify the model down. And that's done the same way we've done before, which is using the clay builder brush and just really going over the model and just simplifying it down. Simplifying the shapes. And if you're dealing with a model like this, like really, really don't be attached to any shapes. This is such an early model. So just go over it and just destroy whatever shapes are there in the name of progress. We just got to have some creative destruction and just destroy it. I can guarantee you that by simplifying a model like this, it's going to read 1,000,000 times better. Maybe not 1,000,000. Maybe 2. Maybe twice as good. So I really recommend that you don't rush ahead when it comes to particularly portfolio pieces. It's a fantastic exercise to do these kind of speed sculpts. I mean, for sure it is, because you're really learning how to prioritize the different parts. You know, you're learning that you can't actually do the tiny little pores on models like this, but you also have to realize that you have to just spend time to make good shapes. That was something I didn't really get when I was doing this, where you really just prioritizing how important good shape work is instead of just getting cool strokes down. And this shape is quite disturbing. I believe this was just a quick pimple or something. So we can just kill that. And obviously we have to kill the center line as well. In this case, you could smooth it down, or you can just use the clay builder brush and just hold down the Alt key. And again, just work at your own pace. Just pause the video a lot and just really get into it. And just take your time. There's not a speed competition. My pace isn't the right one. Maybe I'm working too fast or maybe I'm working too slowly. It doesn't really matter. The only thing that matters is the end result. Of course, if you're dealing with it, if you're actually interviewing for a job, you need to have a certain level of speed when it comes to your work. But when you're building your portfolio, it's imperative that you take the time the work needs. Don't rush ahead. And here's a case of tapering as well, like we talked about before, where it starts off a lot thinner, and then it goes out. So it actually tapers out. Instead of having these lines just be parallel, try to taper it. You can also make it go from thick here into something thinner here. Then I want to soften this off a little as well on the back. Just to make it a bit smoother. So you don't necessarily have to overthink the silhouette. Not that you have to go over every single nook and cranny and really just making sure that you've mathematically thought about every single angle. It's more about getting good, clean shapes, and then you can work them up as you go along as well. Like in this case, I thought this was too sharp and maybe too much of a focal point. So then we can just start to soften it out a little bit. Integrate it more into it instead of feeling like a protrusion which just went through the skull. to soften off the skull like this. And you're going to be able to see that just by doing all these little tweaks to the actual model, to the more internal shapes, the silhouette is going to feel a lot better. Just because now we're thinking about good, clean shapes. And like we said, good, clean shapes will really impact the silhouette. The silhouette is the byproduct of all the other shapes. Simplifying down the center line. The reason why the center line looks a bit crooked is, or a bit weird, is because it originally was a completely asymmetrical model, which also gave it a lot more appeal, to be fair, in the original one. But when I did this, we need to have a symmetrical model, because otherwise it would take twice as long, and it would completely defeat the purpose of this video. Okay, so now we have a silhouette which is much, much stronger. Let's just compare these two. We will go to... So if this happens, you just go to Subtool and you just disable the painting. This is a really annoying bug where sometimes you just, when you deal with layers, it's really hard to actually see the silhouette. So just go in and just disable the poly painting, and that's gonna work with the layer. So compare this to this. See how much cleaner it is? Maybe we took away some of the aggressiveness of it, but at least it's a much cleaner shape, which you can keep on working with in the future. You know, like, it is also important to preserve the original design, so I will probably get back some of the volume he has here around between the teeth and the nose, but we're gonna be sticking with this for now. And then let's enable the teeth, and now we can see what's going on. Hit the V key to go back. And then we'll go back from this awful material. And then we could even make these teeth a bit bigger as well, just to really emphasize that this is a big baddie. And here you can actually see the teeth are asymmetrical. So, but what I would do in this case is, right now you can see the other tooth is kind of just being obscured by the silhouette. So what we can do, we can take this tooth, just hold on Control, can just drag around like crazy to mask one object. And then we can just start to rotate this guy out, like so. Because now if we were to check the silhouette, you can see that now it actually breaks the silhouette like so. Let's just do this with a Move tool or a Rotate tool. So now the silhouette is broken up a lot, and the design just becomes a bit more interesting this way. We can just integrate her a bit more into the actual skull, like so. So the reason this becomes a bit more interesting is because it actually breaks up the silhouette. It comes from a different angle. So now we just have a bit more variation. So this is how I would generally work up the silhouette on a character like this. You know, simplify down the shapes. Think about, is this going straight to curve, curve to curve? What are the main shapes? And are you just adding unnecessary stuff on the model to make it look cool, like brush strokes and all the fancy stuff? Or are the features you're adding, are they completely necessary for your model to work?